Everyone, Peter Zeihan here. In the early hours, Hamas, the political/terror group based on your politics that controls the southern enclave of Gaza and southern Israel, launched an attack into Israel proper, demolishing a little bit of the border, land, sea, paraglider attacks, and literally thousands of missiles. And so far, they've kidnapped at least several dozen civilians and a handful of soldiers and took them back to Gaza with. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, has declared war on Hamas, and military operations are forthcoming. It's a very hot situation on the ground, very fluid. Don't have a lot of information for you there, and honestly, there's people who are much better at that than I am. What I can convey to you is that two aspects particularly stand out that we should monitor. First, within minutes of the news release, the Ukrainian government offered its support to the Israeli government in defending against which is far more than the Israelis have offered to the Ukrainians in response to the Russian invasion. The Ukrainians have been a little annoyed with the Israelis trying to sit on the fence. The Israelis, for their part, have a population that's roughly an ex-Russian. And so they've been trying to not get involved as much as they can because they're always trying to keep their lines of communication open to the Russians as a way to manipulate events in the Arab world. It'll be intriguing to observe if this alters the perspectives of people in Israel, especially since dealing with groups like Hamas is kind of an existential issue, and for Ukraine to come down so quickly and so publicly on their side is definitely noteworthy. There's no direct indication of Russian involvement here, but there are a lot of tactics that very familiar that we've seen. The Hamas group has actually shared footage of some of its attacks, including attacks on civilian targets, which, under normal circumstances would be considered a war crime pretty much anywhere. But the rules in the Middle East are a little odd. And we know that the senior leadership of Hamas has been in and out of Moscow quite a bit over the course of the last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that whole dynamic changes politically. Second aspect is political strategic as well. And that is that the Saudis and the Israelis have been hip deep in negotiations on a normalization program right now. Most of the countries of the Arab world still don't recognize Israel as an independent state and an entity that has broken a little bit under the Trump administration with Morocco and the United Arab Emirates switching sides. But now the question is whether the Biden administration and Saudi Arabia switch sides. And the debate, of course, is about the Palestinians. They're not between the Saudis and the Israelis, but among the Saudis. There's a debate going on within Saudi Arabia itself. It's generational over whether or not they should just ditch the Palestinians completely normalized with relations with the Israelis and just move on. When the older generation of the king, who's probably senile at this point, wants to continue to back the Palestinians, where the younger one ruled by the crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, really doesn't care at all. So we're going to find out really quickly here who actually holds power in Riyadh. And that is going to have any number of implications, because whenever the world's largest oil producer and exporter decides to change its political stance on regional affairs and starts backing it up with money, oil, and military, many intriguing developments can emerge rapidly. So keep an eye on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to gauge their reactions to Ukraine. Watch Riyadh, see what they say about Hamas. And it's not very often that we have a big logjam like this potentially breaking free all at once. It's going to be interesting. Take care.